The mystical lies within each of us, and joy is our shared birthright. So join me, Dr. Shimon de Valencia, as we explore the esoteric, the eclectic, and the mystical baths born of our shared search for meaning and the joy that they can bring with each step we take along the way. In a long history of Egypt, especially Egypt of the classical period, where the ancient faiths were still active and living traditions, there is an amazing consistency, a continuity of deities, symbolism, and myths that sometimes belie the huge revolutionary changes theologically and philosophically that Egypt underwent from the pre-dynastic period up to the Ptolemaic period and even into the Roman period. Gods rose and fell. In the very early period, we know that the solar cult was central and continues all the way through, but it evolves from being all encompassing creation paradigm to a redemptive paradigm from Ra Horachti, through to Heru, or Horus, the great and beautiful goddess Hathor, whom the Greeks called Hathor, she of the beautiful cow eyes and golden eyes. She starts out as a creatrix in certain parts of Egypt, but over time transforms into a deity who is more akin to Aphrodite in Greece. In fact, there are links that can be made between these two deities, and also the great Sumerian goddess Inanna, who becomes the Babylonian Ishtar. The pantheons of deities that rule the cosmos varied depending on where you went along the body of the great god Hapi. This is the deity that embodies the river Nile. And these pantheons, usually enneads, usually groups of 9 gods, which seems to have been a thing for the ancient Egyptians, change. And what causes them to change? Not necessarily a change in belief, more a change in political power. And yet, regional differences were maintained. Devotion to these deities and their centrality remained in their cultic centres, regardless of the national pantheons, which had the political support of whichever dynasty, town, and cultic centre held power at any one time. And we know that moving from the pyramid texts through to the coffin text of the Middle Kingdom, which are truly glorious and worth reading, I might add, to the books, what we call the Books of the Dead, but were not called that in Egyptian. Their title was Per Emchru, the coming forth into the light. If you wish, the coming forth into resurrection, are certainly powerful, powerful texts with profound links and continuity and a window into the beliefs, at least with regard to the cultic activity of the afterlife. And in the 21st dynasty, which is in the New Kingdom, around 1550 BCE on until about 50 BCE. These books of the dead become an important part in the spiritual technologies of ancient Egypt. And they have an amazing continuity. They were not Bibles, contrary to what people like Evans Wentz wish they were. They were more put together, do-it-yourself books of flim-flam. The IKEA approach to theology and spirituality. You bought what you could afford. You bought what you thought was important to get you through the afterlife and to come to the blessed fields of reeds, at the very least, if not to a pleasant rebirth. And certainly the golden age of these books is the 21st and 22nd dynasties. This is the period of the Great Papyrus of Ani. If you've ever had the pleasure of being in this papyrus's presence, which I have, and you have the pleasure of being able to read it in the original, which I can with a dictionary, it's the skill with which it's constructed is breathtaking. The scribal arts in it are stunning. And in it we get windows from which we have drawn our understanding of ancient Egyptian belief, with all the shortcomings that manifests. In these are texts which are usually translated as spells, which is true and isn't true. Spells, prayers, invocations, mantras. These are all the same thing. By calling them spells, we reduce them to witchcraft of the most popular kind. And that doesn't do these stunning pieces of literature justice. And in the wonderful array of deities and imagery of which these texts give forth, one deity presents amusement, bemusement, wonder, curiosity, and quite frankly, a headache. And this is a deity known as the great and mighty god Medjet. This deity appears in only 9 instances, twice in the Papyrus Bodmer, once in the Papyrus Turin, twice, once again in the Papyrus Bodmer 100, in the London Papyrus Bemie 9948, in the Cairo Papyrus SR7 10222, in the Cairo Papyrus JE 95637, and of course in the Papyrus Greenfield. The Bodmer Foundation holds the Papyrus Bodmer 101, 102. The Turin Papyrus is held in the Musea Egizio. The Bodmer Foundation has Papyrus 100. The British Museum has the London Papyrus BMEA 9948. The Egyptian Museum has the 3 Cairo Papyrus, and the Papyrus Greenfield is held in the British Museum, this being the latest of these. And this great god Medjet has only one text that we know of, and this is in the Papyrus of Ani. I know the name of that smiter in Egyptian Medjet, among them who belongs to the house of Osiris, who shoots with his eyes and yet is unseen. The sky is encircled with the fiery blast of his mouth, and Hapi makes report, yet he is unseen. Other than this, we don't know anything else. That's it. Finish. His name, the Smiter, can lead you down paths unknown, yet you're on very thin ground, because in the end, the Smiter, in connection to what? Hermann Grappau proposed that Medjet could refer to a star, given that he is said to radiate light, especially from his eyes, and to have a connection with the cyclic flooding of the Nile. But, as many people note, from the scholar Ilaria Caridi through to, well, myself, the name is never written with a star determinative. Either the scribe left this out, or it's not a star. And the likelihood that the scribe of especially the Papyrus Greenfield and the Papyrus of Ani contain very few mistakes. This is unlikely, especially in this unusual manifestation of divinity. According to Ilaria Caridi, visual representations of the mighty god Medjet are arguably problems around which we may never find an answer, and that the answers, unfortunately, may only reside in our imagination and not in any textual proof. The god Medjet is usually depicted as a dome with eyes supported by two human-like feet. A few of the scrolls portray the deity with a red knotted belt above or below his eyes. Some have argued, Wallace Budge, H. Mild and Mykola Tarashenko, who follow on from Budge, that Medjet's dome-like torso is a shroud, or it symbolizes the deity's imperceptible nature. Caridi's proposition that Medjet's prominent eyes and legs could mean that he can see and move and act even though humans cannot see him, an invisible, unknowable god. But in the end, we don't know. And in many ways, this is what makes the god Medjet tantalizingly interesting for those of us that know this deity. I do not know anyone that has made offerings or prayed to Medjet or meditated and somehow gained a spiritual connection. And maybe that is the work of some brave godonaut who wishes to resurrect unknown and forgotten deities to see what treasures lurk there spiritually. When the Greenfield Papyrus went on tour, it did find an interesting reception. Of all the things in this stunning papyrus that grabbed the popular consciousness of the Japanese was actually the great god Medjet himself. What happened was that this god was incorporated into video games, anime, for example, Kamigami no Ki, and oh, suddenly Egyptian God. I really recommend that you chase these up. If this is an example of the god wending his mysterious ways, or her mysterious ways, we assume they're his mysterious ways because the masculine determinative always occurs in the one small text that we've got. So this is not a gender bending deity. In the 2016 Japanese video game Persona 5, his name was given to a hacker group that described themselves as the true executors of justice. And again, for those of a more mystical bent, this might be a sign of the god trying to let people know what it is that he actually does in his role as a deity. In the end, we do not know. And for those of us for whom these mysteries present themselves, I'm sort of glad I don't know. It is possible that he was a clever ploy by a scribe who did not believe in the deities and did not believe even in the role of these papyrus, to maybe throw in a wild card to hint at some hidden form of atheism within ancient Egypt. But the passage, especially the sky is encircled with the fiery blast of his mouth, does not speak of some ploy to hide a rationalist approach to the world devoid of deities. This shows this deity was seen as real. There is the possibility that he represents a supernova and that this occurred at some point during the 21st dynasty and was seen by a scribe or a family of scribes who personified it as this deity. But all of that is just conjecture. And in the end, the great and mighty god Medjet deserves to be more known, more researched. But given the dearth of representations, the likelihood that this will happen is hugely problematic. And so this strange deity that emerged around the 21st dynasty, around 1550, will remain that, a mystery. And in that, I personally am grateful that there are things we do not know, and there are mysteries that we still need to solve, if ever we do. I am Dr. Shimon de Valencia, the Merry Mystic, and this has been a pleasurable journey through the wonder and the mysteries of ancient Egypt and the majesty of the mighty god